All right, all right. Welcome to episode number 2 of the yet to be decided titled show by me, Justin Nava. If we haven't met before, I don't know why you're here. If we haven't met, and if we have met, hey, I'm glad you're here. Let me know in the comments that you're watching and paying attention. My name is Justin Nava, and I've been working in churches, in 4 churches since 2006. And today I have something that's kind of been heavy on my heart. And as I talk more about, we need to have the proper vision. We need to have an outrageous vision. We need to have unreasonable faith, and we need to have relentless pursuit. Someone sent me an article that was written a few years ago, but updated recently, that I think is the epitome, if I'm using the right word, the prime example of why it's so important to have our vision clearly defined and clearly broadcasted both internally and externally. And today's show, we're really talking about why people don't care about your church. Now, when you work with me and my agency, one of the things that we focus on is the external. We're not here to write your bulletin announcements. We're not here to create your pro presenter slides. We're not even here to create internal social media graphics for your church group, something like that. Right, or your flyers, right? We choose to focus on the external because, again, if you haven't heard me say this before, I want to see 1 million churches become the cornerstone of their community, and that effort starts on the outside. Now, once we get them into your doors, then you've got to take that over and become the one that continues to disciple them and whatever you want to call it, put them through your discipleship process, your assimilation process, your onboarding process. We focus on the outside. So what I'm talking about today, though, applies both internally and externally, and that's about communicating why people should care about your church. Now, I understand, and I am on your side, Pastor. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, why should they care about our church? Well, because Jesus is the good news, is the gospel. And that's the ever important message. And if they don't know about Jesus, or if they don't repent from their sins, they're going to hell. Yes, that's why they should care. Yes, absolutely. That's why they should care. The honest fact of it, and the brutal fact is that's not enough to make them care. And I'm not saying we need to go ahead and go into gimmick mode and start giving away free cars and lots of free food, even though a lot of us give away free food anyways. We need to better communicate what that means to their lives. There is an appropriate time and place for someone to say, hypothetically, if Jesus and heaven were real, what do you think would happen to you if you died, right? There is, I believe, an appropriate setting for that conversation, for that question to be asked. I don't think it's in the general church setting. I think that's more of an intimate one-on-one or one-to-few relationship building in the home, in the community, maybe over coffee conversation. It is not a one-to-many pastor preaching, maybe even on a soapbox on the corner. It works for some people. I have whether you like them or not, I have tremendous respect for the courage folks like that have. What I'm talking about here is casting what you can to multiple people and really answering the question why people don't care about your church. So if at any time, let me tell you this, if at any time you're like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense and I don't know where to start, down below is a link to my website, and it's a temporary website, so it's just a one-pager. It's just really a letter to you, Pastor. You can click a button there to either call my phone, which I will not answer right now, or schedule an appointment. We can talk about what we're talking about here in depth with a free introduction call. And I have to say free because some people think that like, oh, I'm going to have to pay with a sales pitch or something like that. That's not what this is about. All right. So here's the deal. Okay. People need to know why they should care. Okay. A great example is, well, you have to answer the question, what does that do for me? Why should I care? Right. Going to church is a very big commitment, Pastor. And I think a lot of us that grew up in the church, we forget that. We forget what it's like to interrupt our weekends to go to church, right? We forget what it's like to make the conscious decision. Man, my friends are going out. TV's good. We can go to the movies. We can go out with friends, we can go dancing with the wife, or out to a nice romantic dinner with the wife or girlfriend, or whatever, spouse. If you're a girl, then you're whatever. So, we forget what it's like to have to make that decision. Well, I have to get up early for church, so I'm going to make a good decision to not stay out so late, or at least know that I need to set up multiple alarms. Then you actually have to get up on Sunday. You forget what it's like to be overworked in a job. We know what it's like to be overworked in ministry. But you forget what it's like to get overworked from a job, have to work 8 to 9 with a 30-minute break, 1 hour commute to and from work. I mean, with the commute, these people are working 12-hour days. And then we've got to totally interrupt the 48 hours that they have peacefully to go to church, or maybe during the weekday to go to an event where I may or may not know anyone, but they have something that I want. The question is, what is that something? Because you're not going to get a lot of volunteers to come say, yeah, come preach to me, right? There's a time and place for that. But if you want to be the best known organization in your community, then you're going to have to learn how to communicate your message in multiple ways. Even though it's the same message, you're going to communicate it in unique ways, right? And so why don't people care about their church? Well, it's because they don't really understand what you're about, which is why you'll always hear me talk about focusing on the message, okay? You are uniquely equipped to uniquely reach a unique group of people. And if you cannot communicate that to your city, your community, your neighbors, then they will assume, based on their current past experiences, they will assume what your church is all about. And it 9 times out of 10 will be completely incorrect. Okay. If I told you I go to Crosswaves Church and we meet on Sunday afternoons, okay, you might automatically assume, okay, Sunday afternoons is probably a young person church because they don't want, they want young people to sleep in a little bit. Crosswave, so there's no Baptist in there, there's no Methodist. They're probably non-denomination. Probably don't have an affiliation with any organization. Let's see. They meet Sunday afternoon, so they meet. So they're probably going to a building. Can't really tell how many people it could have, but I've never heard of it, so it's obviously not a mega church. It's not Lakewood. Justin's in Houston, though. He's in the Bible Belt, so it might be when I say, my church meets in Sunday afternoons, you can automatically go into all of those assumptions. And what you don't realize is it's 4 people in a house meeting together in relationship to break bread, pray, worship, and watch a message from a pastor that is in our church is actually part of the Baptist SBC denomination. So, you can make all of these inferences just off of one sentence. My church, Crosswaves Church, meets on Sunday afternoons. You can make all those inferences, but until you hear that message, that Crosswaves, we believe that relationships happen best in the home, and we believe that we want to combine the intimacy of homes with the authority and teaching quality of a senior pastor. When we combine those things, we end up having groups. Our church meets in groups in homes throughout the country. And hey, because of that, we don't have a building, we don't have a mortgage, and we can put more money towards ministry. A big chunk of that, in fact. So when you hear that, then you kind of get a better understanding of that's why he meets on Sunday afternoons. That's why he has the freedom to meet on Sunday afternoons. That's why I see him tweeting on Sunday mornings, because he's not in church yet. So, now imagine, Pastor, let's just use, for example, because I'm a good old Baptist boy. Let's use, for example, First Baptist Church. First Baptist Church, you have a place here Sunday mornings at 9:30. Okay. Here's what I automatically assume. Me being born and raised Baptist boy in Houston, Texas. First Baptist Church, you're probably a large church. You probably got all the political guys. That's where the mayor goes. That's where the city council goes. They rub elbows. They don't really do much work in the community, but they give a lot of money. They have a nice, really big building. Probably got about 70 or 80% of their budget actually goes towards facilities and staff and all that. And 20% might go to the community. Probably 5% goes to co-op that I don't even know who that is. Another 5% goes to international missions. I never see that money in the city. So, that's what it is. Baptist Church. Grew up Baptist. I was yelled at. I had to be quiet in church. We sang hymns. We weren't allowed. We didn't have a projector or drums like my friends did. We sang out of hymnals. Probably a boring church. You meet Sunday mornings at 9:30, which means you probably met at 9:30 your whole life. I don't want to wake up that early on Sunday morning. Why would I wake up that early on Sunday morning? And if I do wake up that Sunday morning, I'm not going to spend it ironing a suit, because the last First Baptist I went to, I had to wear a suit, and my wife didn't wear a dress, and people looked at her weird, and no one talked to us. So if I'm going to wake up before 9:30 on a Sunday, I'm going to use that time to make a nice breakfast platter for my family, let everyone sleep in, have some nice chocolate chip pancakes for the daughter. And, we might, if I really want to hear a message, we'll turn on Joel Osteen on the TV. So those are literally up until a few years ago, when I really started focusing on what this messaging is. If you had asked me, hey, what do you think about First Baptist Church? That's exactly what I would have thought. It's the hoity-toity people that give lots of money, very nice, fancy building, don't see much community efforts happening. They're rubbing elbows, and they're probably going to be more traditional conservative, because that's what Baptist churches were when I was growing up. Now, if you were to go to First Baptist Edinburgh, where I went, my family joined and went and served in for 3 years while we were in that city, we had none of that. Right? We were one of the smallest church buildings in the area, because it was a heavily Catholic community. We had a large community presence serving. We had markets every month to give away free food. Our neighbors knew to come to us if they needed something. And we had a projector and a rocking band. And also, again, I think I said this, 150, 175, maybe 200 on Easter, in a predominantly Catholic area where you've got masses with thousands of people. So, when I talk about First Baptist in Edinburgh, that is going to be a complete 180 to what my initial impressions or thoughts of a First Baptist church would be. Now, the impression of a First Baptist church from someone that didn't grow up Baptist is going to be totally different, right? First Baptist Church, they're the large building that probably don't give any money to the community. They don't care about me. And I got weird looks one time when I walked past their farmer market stall. Right? So that could be someone's impression that has never really connected with church before. So how do you conquer that? How do you overcome people's impressions about your church and get them to care about your church, right? Because that's what I want to talk about today. Why don't people care about your church? Is because they don't understand who you are. And I'm going to get into how to make them care, because you have to be able to answer that question. But you have to understand that people don't care about your church because you're not telling them what they should care about, okay? You need to cast your vision and your purpose clearly to the community, communicate clearly to the community, why you're there, why they should care, and not only that, what you intend to do, right? So often we say, our mission is to make disciples who make disciples. What does that have to do with me, who can barely afford my rent, and my wife can't stay employed, and I've got 2 kids, one with special needs? What does that have to do with me? My life is busy enough. It sounds like you're going to give me homework, right? We have to get out of our mindset of this is what's important to us, therefore it should be important to them. That's not true. Even Jesus preached, he was, what's the word I'm looking for? Prolifically to the time, right? He was outside the norm, but he wasn't super crazy. He wasn't John the Baptist. But he was prolific. He was speaking outside of the norm. People were listening to them, but also he fed them. He called them. He gave them news. He said, hey, blessed is the meek, right? Everywhere else in the world, the meek get nothing. They get ridden on like a horse, right? Whenever I think of the word meek, I just had this explained to me, it's like a horse, strong, but doesn't use it, knows how to harness it. Well, I mean, if you had told the biblical world back then, hey, blessed are the meek, what are you talking about? I got to just display my strength. I've got to get respect. He was speaking a little bit differently. So we need to communicate to our community and utilize the tools and resources at our expense to get that message out. Jesus didn't say, hey, come to the synagogue and hear me. Yes, he preached at the synagogue, but he also went out into the city. He went to the well. He went to the mounts. He went to the temples. He went and dined with the sinners, right? He went out to go reach those people with his message. Excuse me, just making sure it's not a client. We got to go out and tell people why they should care. And Jesus did that by drawing a crowd using various ways, speaking in public places, speaking in prolific ways, and yes, even feeding people. And then when the message got hard, like, hey, I don't have any more food for you except for eternal food and water, then people left, right? Except for the ones that really cared and wanted to follow him. So let me pull up my notes here, and I'm gonna go through. It helps me sometimes to look at a real world example and apply it to the church, because I think oftentimes the temptation is we look at a church and we say, well, that's not my church, right? But we can look at a business or another organization and say, well, that's not me, but they're having the same issues as me. We all know churches have the same issues, but really, like we say, we don't have a homosexual issue or a theft issue or a immorality issue. We have a sin issue, right? The sin is what causes us to stumble, and the sin can take multiple forms. Well, churches have a humanity issue, and this show that we're doing here, churches have a communication issue. And so the same communication issues that plague churches are the same ones that plague organizations and businesses. And I really like this article of my friend Dale Critchley, former pastor. Now he's doing ministry through nerd stuff, which is fantastic. I love it. He tagged me in this here because he's like, hey, I know vocation. He's Methodist, so he says vocation is very important to me and to my beliefs in leadership as a pastor, even former pastor. He tagged me in it and he said, hey, this is really good stuff. And I read it and I really like what this writer of this article is saying. So I kind of want to go through what that could look like and draw out some of the lessons that he learned with a failed startup, which I think many of us learned with failed church plants that have had that success and failure opportunity. I want to look at some of the things he realized, because some of the things that he's realizing are the things that we're saying in church, and it's just another way to say it. So I've got an article here, and I'm going to show it on the YouTube, but if you're listening to this audio, don't worry about it, because I'm gonna read it to you. So this is from Medium, and this is success and failure at Pebble. Now, if you don't remember who Pebble was in the early 2010s, one of the first smartwatches, and they were really kind of like the Android of smartwatches. You had Fitbit and you had Pebble, and Pebble raised a lot of money because they were more of the geeky watch. Okay. And so it looked geeky. It looked like an Android phone. It looks like something that you have to be a nerd or a geek to understand, like a techie guy, whereas Apple, you get it. It just works. Right. And so Pebble had a really good launch. They had a lot of people come into become customers, and they didn't capitalize on the long-term gain potential as a company. Okay. Now, I think this is very important. I'm going to read some of this, okay, just for the people listening, but also to help kind of bridge the gap of what we were supposed to do, okay? So, it says here, Pebble defined what a smartwatch was meant to do. We were succeeding in inventing the smartwatch, an entirely new category, but we failed to create a sustainable, profitable business, and it ended up selling to Fitbit at the end of 2016. Okay. So basically they were funded. They were totally community funded. They did not have any investment. They did not have like a prototype, right? They said, this is an idea we have. Here's how we're going to build it. And they're raising money to essentially create, raise capital, right? That's what Kickstarter does is they raise the capital and then they build the project. Okay. It's kind of like a church plant, right? We don't have a building. We don't have an audience. We don't have a congregation. We don't even have our 501c3 paperwork, but we have a vision, we have a goal, we want to see this change, and no other church is doing it, so we're going to plant a new church, and you have to raise money to plant the church, right, to fund it, okay? So that's essentially what they did, and they failed and ended up having to sell to Fitbit, their main competitor, which is what a lot of churches have to do, right? We have to end up, if we fail, we either shut our doors or we merge with another church. So what happened, okay? I'm going to skip down a little bit here, but I'll put a link to the article in the YouTube. Here's what the founder said, okay? The underlying problem was that we shifted from making something we knew people wanted to making an ill-defined product that we hoped people wanted. Okay. At the last year of their existence, they desperately tried to cut costs, retain the team, build another product, raise money, and then eventually they did have to sell the company. This is exactly what Tom Rainer was writing about in Autopsy of a Dead Church, and even a little bit in Simple Church, is that they went into desperate mode in the last year of their life, trying to cut costs. How many churches do we know cut costs just to pay for the building? I know I've been a part of those churches as well. Trying to retain the team, right? Maybe God calls people away. People get burned out. People get burned, period, by other people. Trying to build another product. How many times have we chased, this new event, this new youth, this new building, this new XYZ, this new shining bullet is going to save the church? Raise money. For one church I know of, we had to borrow money just to pay the light bill. Okay. The underlying problem is we shifted from making something we knew people wanted, which is a cool, sexy, geeky watch here that people paid over $10 million, sight unseen. The watch wasn't even built. They just had like visual prototypes, okay? Wasn't even built. They raised $10 million. They only needed $100,000, but they raised $10 million because that's what people wanted. And as time went on, they started deciding what people should want instead of listening to what they wanted. Then they had an ill-defined product, which means they didn't even have a bad product. They had an ill-defined product. They couldn't communicate the usefulness of it. Okay? And here's what the startup founder said. Never forget to define and talk about your long-term vision for the future. When things are going well, it's easy to get caught up in growth, but you need this to carry your company through hard time. Okay? Listen to that again. Never forget to define and talk about your long-term vision for the future. Okay? We're really good about doing this with our families, I think. We're really good about, when the struggles come, right? When there's layoffs at work, when a spouse is laid off, period, right? When something breaks or a child needs support, there's a medical emergency, and all of a sudden your income does not match your expenses. There's a problem there. Even with a death in the family, your emotional capacity does not meet your family's need for your care. Okay? So what do we do as a family? Well, we understand that there's more to marriage than just our happiness. That's what the whole thing about a covenant between you, your spouse, and God is, right? It's to glorify God, and that means that sometimes things are going to get tough so he can be glorified in the end, right? We boast in our weaknesses, and that includes our marriage, that includes our finances, that includes our emotional and mental capability and our health. So, when we would think about it for the marriage, right? When things get tough for the marriage, you still look to the future because you promised in sickness and health, rich or poor, for better or for worse, we're going to stick together because this is our covenant. This is our long-term vision for this marriage, that no matter what, we're sticking together. We're going to get past this and we're going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. Okay. You need that in your church. You need to say, no matter what happens, no matter how blessed we are or how much of a desert we're in, no matter how big we are, no matter how small we are, no matter how many people we gain, no matter how many people we lose, no matter what natural disaster comes our way, we exist to make disciples. We exist to serve our community, to see. There's a church north of me that says we want to see Houston, Texas become a God-fearing city. A God-loving, God-searing, God-revering city, right? Houston, Texas, now the third largest city in the country, in America, in the United States. Third largest city now, surpassed Chicago, finally. I've been saying they was going to do that since I was a kid. That is an audacious, outrageous goal, right? In fact, I even talked to someone who used to work there, and I said, is this really their vision? Because that's a big vision, right? To see some, depending on the census you look at, actual Houston proper or the outlying areas, to see between 4 and 7 million people become God-fearing, God-revering people, God-loving people, right? That's a big vision. And you know what he told me? He said, it's kind of their MO, is to think big and audaciously. I like that. And so when things get tough at your church, the answer is not to retreat and save. The answer is to advance and conquer, right? When things get tough in your marriage, you don't retreat and say, well, fine, we're Well, what did I do here? I changed my camera. You don't say, well, times are hard. Time to go, right? You advance and conquer. How are we going to get over this? How can I support you, my love? How are we going to help the kids? What are we going to do? I'll take a second job. I'll take a third job. We'll sell some stuff, right? This is how we need to treat our church with our vision. We're going to say, church, no matter how lean times get, no matter how thick times get, we are going to be here to serve the community. We are here to change the city. We're here to change the world. We're here to equip more people to love God and love others. We're here to get more people to put their lives in the hand of the master, because little becomes much in the hands of the master. It's one of my newest clients. We just launched their website, so that's on my head. Let me go back to this article here, because there was something else here that I wanted to show off here. Here we go. All right. So we're, here we go. We're going down. Okay. He says it again. Our main issue is that I did a terrible job at defining our long-term vision, right? This is the founder talking. I struggled over and over to define a strong long-term vision for what Pebble as a company would accomplish, right? In some ways we were spoiled. We had a super successful launch. We built exactly what we had promised. Okay? It got to a point where I didn't even discuss it, my vision, that much, because I got apprehensive about folks thinking it was stupid or I was just wrong. I worried they'd lose confidence in me. Okay? This is what a company that's paid. This guy is paid to VisionCast. This is the CEO or the founder of Pebble Watches. And he is having a hard time casting his vision. That's a company. That's a business, right? Take everything about running a business and 10x it, and that's how much more difficult it is to run a church, right? You have 10 times less staff. You have 10 times less money. You have to put 10 times in more work, right? We don't do it for a profit. We do it for passion, which makes it harder. And this guy's doing it for a profit. How many times would we cross broken glass for a profit? How many times would we cross broken glass as pastors to see more people be impacted by the community, by the kingdom, for the kingdom, right? And this guy can't communicate it. And that's why when things got tough, people said, what are we even here for? Why are we making these watches? So your church people might say, why are we going to church? What are we here for? Every week we come in and we do the same thing. Every week there's a fancy announcement video. There's pre-service slides, worship pastor prayers, praise. We do a worship song. Some guy with a tattoo comes up and introduces the church and says welcome and asks people to fill out a guest form. If you're old school or maybe even like just an extroverted church, you do a greeting time. Then we do 2 more songs. Then the set gets low. We do 1 more song with a lower vibe. And then there's a little transition video. And then the pastor comes out and he's wearing a collared shirt but with no jacket because he wants to be relative. He preaches for 20 to 30 minutes. He shuts his Bible. When he shuts his Bible, the worship team comes up. The worship team starts playing under him praying. And then he says invitation. And then nothing happens. People just stand awkwardly at the front. Then we sing 1 more song about how much we love Jesus. Pastor says go and be blessed. Maybe there's a benediction prayer. And then everyone leaves and all the old folks stay and congregate for a little bit. We do that every week. Why? Why would anyone subject themselves to that without a greater purpose? And the reason why people don't care about the church except for a select handful of people is because that handful of people understand what it means. They understand why we're doing it. They're going to be with us through thick and thin. Some of them a little less when it's thin. And when I mean thin, I mean they're not getting their way, right? So, we have to know what that long term is, okay? So your church cannot just be about the spiel that I just did, right? It cannot just be about that service. That service is an opportunity to equip more people to go out and do what we're supposed to do, which is love God and love others. Live a little, love a little. Love a lot, live a little, live a little, love a lot. I don't know, that's another catchphrase I just read from someone else. Love better, live better, something like that. So this is why people don't come to church, guys. This is why they're not coming to your church. They're going to Joel Osteen's church. They're watching his service. They're going to T.D. Jakes. They're going to Stephen Furtick's church, right? They're going to Elevation. They're going to even Saddleback. Love Pastor Rick Warren. They're going to North Point because they are really good about communicating why you should care. If I'm in the area, why should I care about North Point? Because North Point gets me. Because Andy Stanley knows that I have needs, that I am struggling, and that God has the answer. And if I can't figure it out for myself, he's going to simply explain it to me. And if I have further follow-up questions, there are opportunities for me to connect with the church throughout the week via groups, via events, via online resources, that I can figure out why this stuff isn't working in my life and how I can fix it through God, basically, through faith, through God, right? That is what I know about North Point. And if I know that, then yeah, I'm going to go sit through a service. I'll sit through the exact same service I just described, not even a North Point service, if I know the purpose is there. Okay? A little outside of, no, it works. It works. If you think that a purpose doesn't drive attendance, that you need to have a strong service, a great speaker, the fantastic band, the best building, right? If you think you need all of those things, you need to take your lunch break or go after church and go. I tell you what, do it on a Friday night because you'll actually see the kind of people, what I'm talking about. Go to a local comic book or game shop, okay? And you'll see fading wallpaper, walls with holes in it, okay? Stained carpet, and people that can't even keep their pants up, okay? I'm not going to lie. You're going to see butt crack city at this place, okay? But you're going to see it packed. You're going to see folding chairs brought out in the closet because there's not enough seating. You're going to see people playing on the floor because there's not enough tables to play the card games. And you're going to see people that haven't bathed in days. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I'm being honest here. Right? This is what it is. Not everyone. You're just going to see some people. You're going to see some people calling themselves by genders that they are not born with. You're going to see people with long, unkept hair that has obviously not been washed in months. You're going to see people that have smelly breath, that have long fingernails. And you're going to see people that look like me talking to those guys that I just described. Like none of that exists. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to explain the game. We're going to have fun. We're going to tease each other. We're going to celebrate. We're going to high five. Because the purpose of the gaming store or the comic book shop is for people to be themselves and have fun playing games together. And no matter how bad the building is, how bad the parking lot is, how terrible the snack situation is, how dirty the bathrooms are, these places will get packed on a Friday night because people understand the purpose. They've bought into the purpose. And no matter all of the shortcomings, they will go pack that place on a Friday night. And churches are not packed on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or whenever you have your service. It's because we don't communicate our purpose, our message, our vision. We just communicate doors are open at 8, service at 9:30, and we'll see you next Sunday. Wednesday night service if you want to be extra, right? This is why I'm gonna go back to this here. This is why people don't care about your church. They don't care because you don't give them anything to care about. If I said, come to Walmart Sunday morning at 9:30, we'll have some groceries for you at an affordable price. I can get an affordable price at many grocery stores. Maybe I had a bad experience at Walmart. I'm not going to go to Walmart again. The Walmarts in Houston are terrible. Don't go to Walmart in a big city. In the country, in the rural areas, it's a little different, right? But there's no reason I should go there at 9:30. For affordable prices, the price is not why I don't go to Walmart. The price is not the reason I would go to Walmart, right? So we have to figure out, what is that message? What is the vision? What do you want to see happen in your community? What is your church going to do? Okay? Now, you can do this through a variety of ways. I know I'm very service-centric, but I'm really using your language, Pastor, because obviously the church should be more, and you might not be at that point. I would love everyone to be at the point of one of my clients in Indiana, where they are, instead of improving their building, they have a terrible building, by the way, not handicap accessible, multi-layers, very small, no parking, very little parking, if no parking at all. but they're feeding people every month. They're giving groceries to people. They're paying off medical debts for the city, right? They're going out and serving the city. They're supporting people, not just monetarily, not just with food, but also bathing the city in prayer and serving, right? So it's not just about the service, right? This is how they show people, this is how this church shows the city that they care, that they are here for you, and why you should listen to our message, because we are doing this because of our vision to make disciples and impact our city for generations and generations. That is a powerful message and vision. So what vision has God given you, Pastor? What vision has God given you? It's not to run P&L statements at the end of the month. It's not to preach 4 times a month or 50 times a year, or 48 times a year, right? That is not the vision that God has given you. The target is not the end goal, okay? My goal is not to work out every day. My goal is to be healthy and live to see my great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren. The means to do that is working out and eating healthy, right? But I don't wake up saying, yeah, I'm gonna work out today. I'm gonna jump on that Peloton for an hour. I'm gonna go outside and run with my child. I'm gonna go play some sports, play some pickup ball. I cannot wait to wake up and eat chicken and rice and green beans. Oh, so good. No, I'm not waking up doing that. I'm waking up saying this is kind of tough, but you know what? I have more things to live for than a nice slice of pizza, right? And so, despite everything else, you have to know how to communicate your vision. Let me read what the founder said again. When things are going well, it's easy to get caught up in growth, but you need your long-term vision to carry you through hard times. We shifted from making something we knew people wanted to having an ill-defined product that we hoped people wanted, because they did not communicate their vision. They did not make what people wanted. They did what they wanted to do. And so often, Pastor, we say we want to make disciples who make disciples, but then we get so focused on, okay, we've got to have a good service with a good system, a good foundation, good follow-up and all that, and we don't connect the two, right? Giving bread is good things. Giving milk is good things. Giving groceries and vegetables is good thing. Paying off debts is good things. But if it doesn't fit or align with the discipleship making process, then why are you doing it? And if it doesn't, then why am I here? Right? Why am I here? I think there's a place for Sabbath. I think there's a place for a break, but I did not get married so I can play video games more. Did not get married so I can play on my phone and scroll through social media more. I got married to live a higher purpose. And yes, I do those things, but I do them at a minimum because my purpose is to take care of my family. I have to work to take care of them. I have to make sales to take care of them. I have to take care of my house to take care of them. Because if I let my tree overgrow, it cracks my house foundation, and then I have not provided a safe and secure home for my family, right? That is what drives me to get outside and fix these things before they become problems. And right now, Pastor, you have a choice. You need to decide, am I going to continue down the road that we've been going down, that served a purpose at one time, but now we're just spinning our wheels, not understanding why we do the things we do, when we say we want to impact the community, yet we only do things in this 14,000 square foot facility. Or we can really take a look at what vision God has given us as a church and me as a pastor and decide, how are we going to accomplish that? How are we going to move the needle towards accomplishing that vision that God has given us? And I'll be the first to tell you, right? A vision is a static image of a dynamic flux, meaning you can have a vision to see your town become a Christ-fearing, God-loving town that is full of disciples and going out into other towns. That is one image of an ever-changing landscape of culture, of community, even of natural occurrences, right? All that could be wiped away with a tornado or a hurricane or a tsunami or a flash flood. We've seen cities devastated and have to go into years of recovery. And the church says, we're not going to help with that. We're just going to keep having service, right? Pray for us. There's a pandemic. Pray for us. We might close the doors. We'll figure out an online service because that's what we've always done. And yet there is no community impact. There is no sharing the love and good news of Christ. There's only, let's keep doing what we've been doing, just maybe in a new way. because it makes us comfortable. That is what we need to do to get people to care about us. We need to communicate our vision, the reason why we exist, and we need to communicate it in a way that is impactful and meaningful to the people we want to reach. Okay? My mother-in-law, if I tell her, hey, I want to make you a disciple who makes disciples, she is going to say, yeah, okay, what's for lunch? Right? Because she knows that one of my purposes is taking care of my family and raising a God-loving family, and part of that is feeding them good lunches, which she is then invited to. So that, but if I tell her, I know you're struggling, I know you're in a constant cycle of XYZ, and I know that you tell me this, there is a greater purpose to your life. Let me tell you what that is. Let me show you how I can help, how God can help, how we can help as a family, how we can support. That is what's going to be meaningful to her. And when she hears that and feels that, then she might listen to when I try to fish, right? The city of Houston does not care about making disciples. They don't. What they do care about is taking care of their family, having a more comfortable life, seeing more success in their life. And if your church, if your Houston church, let's just pretend you're in Houston, if your church is not going to meet that need, then another less biblical, more false teaching, false prophet makes some promises that they'll then buy into because you couldn't communicate your vision for the city, for the lives, and how the real gospel is going to help and support them to live a more purpose-driven life. Instead, they'll just try to have their best life now with someone else. So what do we do? It's not enough to hope people come to church, okay? It's not enough to hope that they come to church. Again, we need to step out from our threshold into the world. The whole thing, be in the world but not of the world. We need to get out from this side of the door and go out into the world and grab their attention, because with that attention, we can then point them to the life-saving, God-fearing message. Right? Our neighbors are becoming more addicted. They're becoming more abused. They're struggling more than ever. And instead of going out to help them, we say, come here. Right? If my daughter is riding her scooter outside and she trips and skins her knee and starts crying in pain, I'm not going to yell from the garage, come here. I might if she's being a baby about it. Let's not lie about that. But I'm going to go to her. I'm going to run to her. In fact, there's the Bible verse. I can't remember. It's been years since I read it. As a mother runs towards her crying child, God runs to us even faster. Someone tell me what Bible verse that is I'm thinking of. We need to go out there and grab their attention and say, there is more for you in this life. That is what it takes. Attention, grabbing awareness is the first step there. That is why I'm here on this earth, is to help your church get more attention, to get more people into your discipleship process. They cannot go to you if they do not know of you. Okay? Listen to that again. Your community cannot go to your church if they do not know of your church. Do you hear me, Pastor? They need to know about you. And I'm not just saying know where you are. I'm not just talking about, we need to rank you higher in Google so when people are looking for you, they can find you. I'm saying they need to know why you exist. Imagine if your community knew more about your church than they do about Potter's House Church. Imagine if when they thought of church, they thought of your church and not Elevation. Imagine if someone said, have you met Pastor Stanley? And they say, oh, Pastor Stanley down the road at First Baptist? No, I was talking about North Point, dude. Imagine if your city knew you better than Stephen Furtick. And this isn't to put you on a pedestal. This is to put the gospel on the pedestal, and you're the pedestal, Pastor. We need to get your church out there and your people out there. A friend of mine, Jeff Reed, he's with Stadia, and now he's with Digital Church. He does a lot of stuff with digital online churches. He said something really good during a meeting, and I wrote it down, and I was very like, dude, this is awesome. He said, people don't learn by PowerPoint. People learn by experience, It's one thing to go up and teach people about Jesus. It's another thing for them to experience him in worship, in healing, in some kind of miraculous intervention, right? That's why testimonies can never beat a sermon, I believe, right? And so we can't just tell people about our vision to impact lives and make disciples. They need to experience it. They need to experience the love of Christ. We cannot just go out and yell at them, hey, Jesus loves you, make a decision, repent. Okay? Unless you're going to start wearing a burlap sack and eating locusts, or is it honey of locusts? Right? You need to go out there and they need to experience your church. You need to surround them and bathe them in the loving hope of Christ brought upon by your church. Your church is the hammer, right? We all know that. God inspires people to take action and do good works within your church, so he gets the glory. However, you are the conduit. You are the thing that ignites your city to live with a higher purpose and love God and love others. That is what's missing. That is what people need to experience of your church. Now, how do you do that? Obviously, you can go out there and start doing more ministries. And I understand it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. And I'm going to wrap it up because my wife's texting me. I got to take care of our child in a few minutes. It's easier said than done. The first thing, though, is you have to make a decision. You have to define what it is that needs to happen, decide to act on it, and then take micro steps that then turn into macro steps. Okay? That's how you make anything a reality, whether it's weight loss, making money, or growing a church, or taking care of your family, right? I'm going to decide I want to lose weight. I'm going to define what that number is going to be, and then I'm going to take micro steps that then turn into macro steps. I'm going to have one healthy meal a day. I'm going to cut carbs out of one meal a day. I'm going to drink less caffeine. I'm going to drink more water. And then eventually I'm living the healthy life that I look at skinny white ladies and I'm like, man, how do you do it? Right? Over time, I can get that. And take it from a guy that's lost about 117 pounds, I think is the latest number. Okay? You need to make a decision to do something about it. Then you can make the plan. Okay? Now, I want to make you the best known church in your community. Not even the best known church. I want to make you the best known organization. Okay? If you live in Houston, I want you to be more famous than Lakewood. If you live in California, I want you to be more famous than Hollywood. Okay? You've got to be the most best known. When someone says, oh, church, they need to think your church, not the church they grew up in and got slapped in or yelled at when they were growing up. Not the church that chased them out because they got divorced and said, you're not welcome here anymore. Right? They need to think of your loving church that cares about them, that wants to impact them, that wants to improve the city for generations and generations, to grow the kingdom, to impact the kingdom, and give them a purpose-filled, hopeful, healthy life. They need to think of your church. And so you have to decide that something needs to change. You have to decide people need to know why they should connect with my church. People need to know how to connect with my church. Once they know the why, what are they going to do and how are they going to do it? Right? That's kind of where we come in. Okay. You focus on the internal. Just doing that internally is tough, Pastor, because if your internal folks, if your congregation does not understand the purpose, they will go to another church that does. Okay. And it's not always, let's be honest with ourselves. It's not always God's calling me away. No, dude, they've made the decision. Now they're just trying to justify it spiritually. Right? So, we need to, I'm not saying we need to lock our members down that once you join a church, you never leave it. But I promise you, if you make your vision, your mission, your reason for existing, your purpose clear, and the roadmap of how you're going to do that clear to your people, just your people, your retention, churn, whatever you want to call it, your churn is going to decrease, your retention is going to increase. Okay, the only people that are going to leave are legitimately the only people that God are calling away. And it's usually because they're moving away or because he's called them to service in another church, right? And if they do move away for other reasons, that's probably because that other church made their purpose and why people should care about that church more known than your own church, which means that an external entity is communicating to your people better than you are. So you've got to handle the internal. That's more than a full-time job already. Okay. Some people are going to get mad at that I said that. Like, it's okay for people to move churches. Absolutely it is. Just like it's okay to pray, but it's not a reason to procrastinate. Okay? And it's certainly not a reason to justify sin. Well, I prayed about it. God wants us to get a divorce. I prayed about it. Right? Justification. False justification. So number one is you've got to focus on the internal, and that is so difficult, right? I was on a podcast earlier, the Lava Hot podcast, and we were talking about how a small business, a $1 million small business, has one CEO, one founder, one owner that has to communicate to a team of maybe 3, and maybe a team of contractors. That's $1 million business, right? You might have a team of 5, but 6, but you've got to communicate to those people internally and maybe some contractors, right? That's it. So at most, as a $1 million business, you got to communicate to 10 people. At most, to do your business. That same $1 million budget church has not only got to communicate with 3 or 4 staff and maybe another 10 volunteers, lay leaders, whatever you want to call them. Then they've got to communicate with 150 to 300 people that are a part of the church internally, before you even consider going outside of the doors with the people that are not plugged into your church. So yeah, we have it 10 times harder just to communicate internally. You need help getting that message out to the external people to your city. Because if you start chasing after the people in the external city, the people internally are not going to be fed. And it doesn't matter how much you say, I want to make disciples. God has given you disciples to equip, and you're not equipping them because you're too busy chasing the outside people. Then you bring them in, and then they don't feel equipped. They don't feel fed because you're still too busy chasing outside people. It's the same thing people hate about cable companies, right? You give the new people a great deal, and then you screw the people that have been here for years, the loyal customers. We end up having to pay more. Same thing that we hate about cable companies is the same thing people hate about churches. We need to change that. So, Pastor, you focus on the inside. Let me and my team focus on the outside, and together we will bring more disciples into you to equip, to feed, to nurture, to grow into disciple makers, so then they can go out into the city. And instead of having to convince people, hey, why your church is important and why Jesus is important, we've already done that work for them. And all your people have to do is, have you made a decision yet? That is the key difference. That is how you get people caring about your church. That's why people don't care about your church, because you haven't given them a reason to. And then why people do care, so you communicate what that reason is. I've got to take off, guys. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Wherever else you are, like, subscribe, share, whatever you got to do. Leave a review. Appreciate you guys watching. God bless, and I will see you again next week.